We also, due to many requests, will be creating an actual virtual interview and artist talk with Jessie, Ching Chen, the artist. And I also want to start off with the introduction to who she is and just a brief intro synopsis before I hand it off to her, and then we actually get started with the questions. We will also be posting this on our website, and also if you have any other further questions, please do comment or even inquire with us directly on future project shows and the work itself in this specific body of work. Okay, so this exhibition is actually Jessie's first exhibition as a fine artist.
Yes.
You are currently known to the masses as a graphic designer and muralist, and
illustrator.
illustrator.
Yes.
And she also does a lot of pop-ups in many rounds of practices and mediums, so you may know her from that as well. You are New York based, and you have done a lot of work on the East Coast of the United States.
Yes.
Amazing. And again, this is her first show as a fine artist, and also first time not only exhibiting her work, but as the artist curator as well, which I think is fabulous. I'll actually throw it to you to give yourself even more depth and intro of who you are as an artist, and then a brief history of how you came here.
Okay. Hi guys, my name is Ching. Bill did a fabulous job at pronouncing my official name properly because the spelling is very interesting.
Yes.
And people have calling me Jessie for the longest time, so you guys can refer me as Jessie. And I came to the US when I was 14. And I've been in the US for almost 16 years next month.
Wow,
Yes.
congratulations.
Yeah, so I've been in the US longer than the time I've been in Taiwan.
So you're basically a New Yorker.
Correct. Yeah, people are like, oh, are you Taiwanese? I'm like, yes I am, but I've been in New York for so long. And they're like, okay, New Yorker.
New Yorker.
Yes. So I went to school of visual art for a little bit to do illustration, but I finished my school in a local college for graphic design. So that's how people know of me as a graphic designer, as an illustrator, and everything else but an artist. So this is a time for me to really share that part of me, to be like, hey, one more title for me is an artist. Yes.
And I mean, you formally went to school for this as well, which is very important. And to add on to that before we really dive in, because I think it is an important part of this exhibition, is that you previously worked in construction.
Yes, I did.
Because she had framed and mounted all of these pieces herself for the show. So that's important to talk about.
Oh yeah, so I think after school I spent so much time hopping around in different industry just to gain more experience. And it was right before the pandemic time where I feel like, okay, I think it's time to, and I also kind of just have the opportunity to have more alone time, so I get to create more. And that's the time that I start really tap into the graphic design industry as a career.
That's amazing. I'm actually going to make this an important note for some future questions about the construction background.
Okay.
As it also relates to your mural work as well. You might play in a little bit.
Okay.
But to refocus this on this specific exhibition, which is the Red Paper Station, I wanted to ask you, because I know a lot of people have, how did you come up with the title of the show?
The title of the show, I think it's very direct. I mean, as you can see, like 90% of the pieces in the space are created with red papers. So in Chinese, like traditional custom, we use red paper to do calligraphy, to do window flowers, and I guess like the biggest one, like the custom that people are like familiar with, the red envelopes. So back then, like the actual red envelopes, they're created with the red Shin paper as well. So why the red color is so important or is such an essential color in Chinese culture is also because people associate red with fortune and red with protection. So it has a like a guarding meaning to the society. So that's why in major holidays you will see a lot of red color and red themed decorations.
That is good to know. And we're actually right about to start celebrating Lunar New Year for
Yes.
2025. So this is, I think, a very good way to auspiciously start off the next year in the Chinese calendar. So I also wanted to talk about the material, time, and process of just building out your show. Could you talk about, because you've written it in your artist statement, and also just a summary of this show, is the amount of time that you have to put into the process of paper cutting. Because all of these pieces are not laser printed, these are individually hand cut by Jessie for hours and hours a day. So can you expand on that and just talk about like the practice and time and process?
Okay, I think I'll start with how you formed the question with the material.
Yes.
Because I think I spend a good portion of my writing on highlighting the special paper that I use in most of my projects, which are called 三皮纸 in Chinese, sanding paper. So they're the ancestor of all the calligraphy paper you can source online right now, like Hanji, Washi, and Shen paper. So all these are different names from different origins, but they're basically referring to papers that's made by the mulberry tree art. And I mean, of course, they came with different weight, different color, and different making techniques. But I'll say the common characters among them is they have a very raw and like organic texture. So that's say you purchase a piece of paper that's 1 square foot, and if you feel the paper from left to right, trust me, every square inches feels different. And I think that's the beauty of it because it's so unique. So when you want to duplicate like a design, even though you can actually reproduce a drawing and the cutting format exactly the same way, but the natural of the uniqueness of the paper will just make these two pieces completely different. So I will have to say every single paper cut that any artist create are just one of a kind, period. People are like, oh, can you make another copy of this? I say yes, but they will just look different. And it's not because I cannot do it, it's just because the beauty of the paper itself that brings so much possibility into the creation.
The material itself
Yes.
differs. And I would also like to expand on it as well with even this piece. As you can see, like the red cutting is one type of paper, and then the actual backing itself is another type of paper.
Yes.
And I wanted to highlight and even follow up with how meticulous you are with not only sourcing your materials, but also building relationships with people who are makers and manufacturers of this paper.
Okay, that's a very good question because I think the sourcing process in the US gets very limited just because it is a very it's a type of paper that requires a lot of like cares and handling everything. So if I want to source it locally, it's very hard for me to find the exact thing that I need. So a lot of time actually I'll have to have people over the sea to help me to actually go to the store to purchase and to bring it back for me, or like ship it back to me. And this is when it comes to the power of community. A lot of my friends are from Asia and they travel quite often, and all of them are so amazing to offer to help me to cover this part of the job. So far I have a handful of paper that I get to, bounce off from, and I know there are more to come. But another thing is I love to get in touch with people locally sourcing a bit easier for me and for the community.
So if you're in the New York City tri-state area, please do contact us. We will finish off this artist talk with all the information because we would really love to build a relationship with you in the future. And also because we did have an opening night, and this is actually the day 3 and closing reception that we are filming. A lot of people have asked because of everyone noticing very specific paper backing choices, colors of all of your original artworks. Do you think in the future, just given the fact that there are limited resources and material, you'll dive into making your own paper?
That's a very good question. May I give it away, that one piece? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one piece, artwork in this vase on display that I use a piece of handmade paper made by myself to be the backing of it. And the material that I use to make the paper are all the baby scraps that I collect through creating all these pieces and make them into that dark, muddy color kind of paper. Yes. The fact that everything's done in the studio, so I would say the texture is very interesting, very uneven, very bumpy, but it's beautiful. And if in the near future I have the chances to upgrade the process of that, they'll be amazing, and that's actually part of my plan. Yes.
Please note that Jessie is a one-woman show when it's been coming to actually developing her pieces, her composition, and also the materials and time put into each individual artwork. And currently, because of the delicacy of the paper, she also frames all of her pieces herself as well, which is why I think that they are really worth your while if you are an interested patron or supporter of the arts. So, also to go off of that and to kind of full circle this question, with the sustainability aspect of you saving pieces from previous projects, how long does it take for you to develop a piece from start to finish?
Ooh, okay, that's a very big question because I think every collection or every single piece comes a little bit differently. But I will be very honest, I think every single piece starts with a long time of research before I say, okay, I'm ready to work on this. It mainly because every single piece has a reference, has a actual, how should I put it, like a literature reference from back in the days, from the history, and I actually have a index list of where I refer like each mythology or like story, writing pieces, or even like other illustrations, artwork from back in the days. So I have everything written out, like documented, just to make sure that if anyone asks me, I know where to direct them.
Site sources.
Yes, site sources. Yes. And I think once I finish all the research and I have my concept developed, then the next step will be doing all the baby sketch in the sketchbook to confirm, oh, this is the image that I actually want to create. And another thing I'll actually think about during that planning process is also thinking about what kind of techniques I can actually incorporate in different pieces. So some of the pieces, you look at the from the snake collection, you start seeing combination of papers, right? The clouds is in one paper, and then the snake is in another paper, things like that. So I'm trying to play around with different things. So I'll say it's very hard to tell you exactly how long each piece takes, because every single piece kind of has its own like length of work time.
You created a large body of work in a very short period of time, which was around, I believe, 5 weeks in preparation for the show. A lot of people were asking, do you work on multiple pieces simultaneously?
Yes. So especially when they're coming from the same collection, I'll have to think about as a whole, as the whole result, and So sometimes I'll draw like a few sketches and see how they look together and what kind of paper to use, how much gold is there, how much red's there. So it's a lot of planning and a lot of decision making for sure. But the interesting thing about this show is that they're actually pieces that I elevate when I was framing them, so they become more complete. May I give an example?
Absolutely.
For example, the dancing lion right behind us right here. I actually only made one of them when I first created, but then I looked at them and I was like, oh, it'll actually look amazing, and I think people will engage it better when they see a pair, because that's how most of the lion dancing performers are set up. So I gave him a brother. So the one on the right hand side actually happened a lot more reason compared to the first one. So I made decision, like I have decision making while I'm framing, especially for this show.
And also, even with this piece, I can see, and of course, the viewers at home will actually get close-up images of this as well on not only social media but on the website as a portfolio piece. These are complementary. They're not identical twins.
Yes.
Which I think is very beautiful as a pair that they should live together.
I think that's the beauty about paper cutting. It's like, yes, of course, like people can say, hey, you can just trace off like the first one to the second one, but I'm like, they're just not the same lion. Yeah, they should get their own characteristic in it, so I make them different, so they feel different too. One's cuter than the other ones look a little bit more mature, and I just love how they goes together.
That's perfect. I actually would love to segue, since we've been building up to this, is you do a lot of research, you do a lot of diving into stories, mythology, a lot of background into each piece. And a lot of, again, folks, and myself included, are very curious of how you would categorize your artwork. Because you're Taiwanese born and you now reside here in the United States, would you say this is Chinese/American inspired art, where there's a modernization to a Western palette? Is there Taiwanese roots, backgrounds that inspire the work, or is this more of just a general celebration of Chinese culture as a whole? I know it's a big question.
It's a very big question. I think there are terms that I'm not sure exactly how they're apart from each other. Do you mind to kind of differentiate?
I think that with the first term, which is like the Chinese/American modernization, is especially with our generation, where it's very third culture, where we grew up not only with our background and how we go home to basically our original homeland country, but we have to re-assimilate ourselves into the West, and how the Western world sees us, is perceiving us, but also how we have to present ourselves in our personalized culture. It becomes very third culture. It becomes a mix and meld of Western and Chinese influence.
I see.
And then my secondary question is, a lot of artists do have inspiration and callbacks to where they were born in their mother country. And Taiwan is a different place, space, culture, background than the rest of China, just to be able to give context and a little bit of history. Is there specifically Taiwanese influence, or would you categorize this body of work as Taiwanese influence?
Okay.
And the last thing is just a celebration of China and just the rich culture and stories as a whole.
Okay, so that's very hard. So I will give you my take on this, but you might need to conclude it for me real quick. So, my family from Taiwan, my grandparents from my dad's side, they are from Taiwan. So they went through all these historical events in Taiwan. So my dad's family will consider more as like Taiwanese. My mom's family, my grandparents from my mom's still back in Taiwan, we definitely was raised differently. My mom was raised very different by comparison to how my classmates' family was raised. So I think that just the tone was being set from how my mom was raised. Because my mom was the one spending the most time with us when I was young, and my siblings as well. So my mom is an elementary school teacher, and she raised us with tons of books, tons of what people consider as old school boring activities. For example, we learned how to do tea ceremony when I was in elementary school. We had to go to calligraphy class every Saturday morning when all my friends are doing sports. And I also have to learn like traditional like Chinese like dance for a little bit when I was still one girly. And my mom don't let us use the internet.
Okay, so this is very old school.
Very old school.
China.
Yes. And for her, she feel like, you don't necessarily have to be a pro at all these activities, but by experiencing these activities, practicing them, you will learn where you are coming from. You know the culture more, you are more educated. That's how she defined. And I did not realize how special that whole childhood was until I was in New York.
Yes.
I started encounter with a lot more people who came from similar but very different background. People who came from mainland, people who are also from Taiwan with different type of family setup and things like that. And I was like, oh wow, so you did not learn calligraphy. Oh, you did not learn Go. You don't know tea ceremony. I'm like, amazing. The first culture shock I had in the US was not east to west, was east to east.
Yes, absolutely.
That was very interesting. And I think it's because the fact that I start noticing the difference in how I was raised by comparison to other people, I start appreciating. I did not enjoy them when I was young. Yes. So I want to go to do sports. Yeah. So I think it's all these things that come up later on in my life that I start appreciating more. And also, it's just a way for me to stay in touch with my family.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's
so
how
do you categorize that?
I think this exhibition is also a good cultural appreciation, but also a cultural celebration. And then another thing is, I think this specific show, because I know what you have in the future, which we'll get to, but I think this specific show is also a great way of education and re-education for Westerners and then Chinese Americans alike. Because I myself am half Chinese, and I never grew up with any of this cultural background because of just like the eventual diaspora of how my family grew up, and also the fact that I'm only half Chinese. So there's so much that I had to relearn myself, or so much that when you and our group of friends and community talk about things, it actually revitalizes, but also kind of jogs my memory to certain parts of my childhood that I may not have had a positive just experience with, that now I am actually learning and also appreciating 50% of myself more positively.
Very grateful to hear that.
Yes. My Chinese has gotten really good, guys. Not spoken just yet. But actually, this is now going to go into our next question, which has to relate with